That's nice. Hello, and welcome to Life with Francy podcast, a place where you will find all kinds of conversation like mental health, self-love, self-care, trauma, hobbies, and more. With this podcast, I want to create a place where we support one another in business and personal life. Hope you enjoy this episode. Now, let's get this show started. On this episode, I have the pleasure to talk to Elizabeth Yep, you even said it and I said it back and I couldn't. Sorry. Anyway, I have Elizabeth here and I met her through Podmatch, an amazing community for podcast hosts and podcast guests to create amazing collaborations. And they have tools and resources to help anybody in the podcasting world. So, welcome, Elizabeth, to my show. Tell us, what is life with you?
Life with me is pretty amazing these days. I love to go to concerts. I love art. I love historical sites. I just like to explore and learn things. And
I,
also
yeah.
maintain my mental health. That is like a daily battle for me sometimes. I always have to put my mental health first.
Yes. And can you share something that you like to do for your mental health? Like right now, like for me, something simple is journaling. I love journaling,
Yes,
anything to do with
I love
journaling.
journaling too. If I'm having like a really depressed day, like I'll write down things I'm grateful for because your brain will look for more things that like it's like an algorithm. Your brain literally looks for more things. So if you list out like three things you're grateful for, your brain's going to look for more things to be grateful for.
Hmm.
If you like sit there and dwell on the negative, your brain's going to search out more negative. So, and for people like me who are neurodivergent, we don't always have the right chemicals working at the right time. So that can be a struggle.
Right.
But I also, I like to do it. I've noticed that my mental health fluctuates with the moon. So, like when the full moon hits, more arrests happen. People, the moon controls the tides. We are 70% water. It's pretty, it's common sense that to think that the moon would have an effect on us. Some people more than others, but I notice my sleep schedules get messed up, depending on the moon stage. So, during the full moon, I'll write out things that I want to release or, like anger or certain triggers or trauma, addiction, whatever. And then I just throw it away and just try to be done with it. And then during the new moon, that's it's supposed to be, a time for growth and setting goals and intentions. So I'll write down things that I want to accomplish. And, it distracts you. I have a lot of PTSD and trauma. So I found that, if you constantly talk about trauma, your brain doesn't know the difference between a memory and what's actually happening. So by talking about something you're not ready to deal with, it can just be re-traumatizing and people don't even realize it. And a lot of people try to help like, oh, well, talk to me about it. Like that's not helping. Like you really need to distract yourself and because your brain's going to play it over and over again no matter what. So talking about it really isn't going to help. So I'll do affirmations, and there is this style called Zen Tangle art. It's like a meditative art, and I highly recommend everybody go do it. When I was incarcerated, my mom sent me a book and I started doing it in there, and it really helped with the PTSD flashbacks. I'm
Mm.
working on an adult coloring book with Zentangle art right
What?
now. So hopefully in the next year I'll have that out. But I got to get my first out first.
That's
Um,
awesome. Yeah,
yeah,
I love it. I love all of that. And oh my gosh, we have so much in common when it comes to the arts and things like that and dealing with trauma because I have different
yeah.
kind of trauma. But yes, tell us a little bit about your story.
So, I was adopted at 2 weeks old, and with adoption always comes trauma, and that was something I didn't really realize until later in my adult years when I was unpacking all the things I had been through. I started to have mental health issues like as a like teenager, and my parents did everything they could for me, but doctors, they just want to throw pharmaceuticals at kids. And it turns out I'm high functioning autistic, and so none of these psych meds are going to work on me, and they give me antidepressants and they make me suicidal, or they put me in psychosis, and I didn't understand what was happening. And that can be so scary, especially for a teenager. They don't, if you go for help, you think you're just going to get institutionalized or, whatever. It's a very hard line to walk, knowing if you're going to say too much or if it's going to get you put in a padded room or not. And, we really need to address how, we deal with mental health. The first thing, if your child is, experiencing any mental health symptoms, cut out all processed food and, artificial, if I eat candy with artificial dyes in it, I'm going to be manic. I'm not going to be able to sleep. And so they ended up diagnosing me with bipolar when I was, in my early 20s because my sleep patterns were so off. But according to the DSM-5, to be bipolar, you have to stay awake for a week. I had never done that. Like, I had
Oh,
never
that's
done that.
interesting.
I had only stayed awake for, like 2 days at the most. And so, I'd gone through the whole ADHD and, that diagnosis as well. So they're throwing the amphetamines at me. And those, even if I take them regularly, I'm hearing stuff that isn't there. And, then of course they're like, oh, well, you're crazy. You have mental health issues. And it's like, yeah, I do, but I wasn't hallucinating and doing all that stuff, before you put me on these medications. And, they love to talk about the 2% of people where these medications work, but for a lot of us,
Yeah.
they really don't. And so you have to figure it out on your own. And that was really hard for me to do. And, because I'm high functioning autistic, if you don't tell me something direct, I'm not going to read between the lines right away. And that was a hard lesson for me to learn, because I got myself in some really dangerous situations that I didn't realize at the time. And I ended up getting with a really violent man in my early 20s, and he gave me a really bad head injury. And that's how I got hooked on opioids because I went to the hospital, with my skull showing, and um, the doctor gave me the opioids. I found out I was pregnant, and when I tried to refuse, they threatened me with child protective services. So
Mm.
that's how I became an addict. And, this is such a problem. Big Pharma is making so much money off of the addictions and the pain and suffering of Americans. And it's just feeding it right to the prison pipeline. And, when you go to prison, the only thing that happens is you get more traumatized. It's going to happen. 70% of women, before we even go to prison, uh, we have some sort of domestic violence or sexual assault.
Yeah.
70%. That is a big number. And so, once I got to prison, I realized like I have to take charge of this. Nobody's going to help me. So, I read a lot of books, as much as I could about, you know, mental health and trauma. And, one thing I learned about trauma is, and it helped me a lot, the part of your brain that holds traumatic memories doesn't register time. So
No.
when you have these people telling you, oh, just get over it. It happened so long ago. That is so invalidating and it is so damaging. It's like, don't you think I'd like to let this go? Like, don't you think I'd like to
Mm-hmm.
stop waking up screaming and, everything else? So if you're one of those people out there, it is not your fault. Like the part of your brain, like literally doesn't register time. So that's why it feels like it happened yesterday. It's not just you. And, you know, distracting yourself is one of the best ways to deal with trauma because your brain doesn't know the difference between a memory and what's actually happening. So a lot of times when people are like, "Oh, you can talk to me about it," yes, they're just trying to help.
Yep.
They don't realize what they're doing is actually causing more harm.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I do is I try to distract myself. You can do this. There are certain little grounding exercises, like you can name the color of everything in the room, or touch the like the texture, and name what the texture is. Anything to distract yourself. When I was incarcerated, that was really hard because I was in a cell that had nothing in it. So my favorite band is Slipknot. Like I said, I'm a rocker chick. So I would name the first Slipknot song, sing the first lyric, and then go to the next Slipknot song. And that's how I would distract myself, when I was incarcerated because I was having they gave me the wrong medication when I was in solitary. And I was hallucinating that I was back in my old apartment with my ex because the cell was set up the same way my bathroom was. And his favorite thing to do was trap me in there and torture me for hours.
Mm.
So I
Oh my
was
God.
literally having this like full blown PTSD like hallucination that I was back there. And the only way I could make it stop was if I hurt myself. And I don't know why, self mutilation was, the thing that brought me out of it, but it was. So I had to deal with that, like because I discovered this new way to like keep my sanity that was really destructive and really unhealthy. I had to find all these other ways to, combat that. And Zentangle art, like I was saying, you can look up Zentangle art on, the internet and you can get all the different designs. It's literally just meditative art and you don't have to be talented. You don't have to be like super good at it. It's you could take a coloring book, a kid's coloring book,
Mm-hmm.
and do the Zentangle art designs in each section. That's
That's
a really good way to
awesome.
start too. So, and I would say affirmations with each different pattern. So, you're
Okay.
distracting yourself. Also, binaural beats. It's sound frequency
What
healing.
is
You can go on YouTube. Yeah, it's sound healing. You can go on YouTube and just type in binaural beats and you play them while you're sleeping. And it like certain ones do different things. Like some of them will bring the happy chemical out. Others will just help you relax and sleep. They have ones that, supposedly cure cancer, but it's sound healing. I mean, the ancients were really big on this.
mm,
And, I think their mental health was a little bit better than ours, honestly, without all the poisons and, chemicals that they
and
put in our food.
technology and things like that, because that affects your
Yes,
brain so much.
yes.
Yeah, let's just take a breather and because you're throwing so many good things when it comes to mental health, but I want to know more a little bit about your story. How was you able to leave your relationship?
He went to jail. He got into a high-speed chase with the cops, and after he put me in the hospital for the last time, and I went to the battered women's shelter, and they turned me away with 2 beds open. They said that my injuries were too extensive, and it put the other women in the shelter in danger. They had 2 beds open, and so drug dealers basically protected me and gave me work, you
Yeah,
know, and,
and
I ended
that's
up going.
like
I'm
a
sorry,
lot
what?
of women, they get judgment for lifestyles and choices, but when you're not dealing with mental health, then having the wrong process to deal with your mental health,
Yes.
not having the right resources, then you fall into jail. Now you have bad people paying attention to take
Yes,
advantage and do what they need to do.
absolutely. And we so many people get backed into a corner. And if people's basic needs were met in this country, we would not have such a high crime rate. Plain and simple. Once I lost my main care because I signed my kids over to my father, I couldn't even take care of them with that head injury. I was waking up on the ground, having seizures and not knowing how long I was out for. And I'm going to wake up to a tragedy one of these times. And so, I was getting judged for that. Oh, you don't have your kids. You're an addict. Yeah, I put my job as a mother above all is to keep them safe.
Hmm.
And right now they're not safe with me because I am not even conscious and it's nothing I can do about that. And what am I going to do? Leave them with the man that put me in that gave me that injury? No, I'm not doing that. So,
So your
women
dad
get
took,
judged no matter what in this country. We
yes.
have a very misogynistic rape culture that, I mean, I had conservative women telling me if you don't want to get raped by cops, don't go to prison. Just say you're okay with certain groups of women being assaulted because that's what you need. And until we have empathy for everybody, for every woman being assaulted, for every, marginalized group that is going through something and ending up, with a higher crime rate, this country is not going to get better.
Mm-mm. And to validate your feelings on that decision, that was the right decision for your kids at the time, because you knew that that wasn't that wasn't the best for them, as you was not, you had to take care of yourself first. Was your dad able to take care of them,
Yeah,
and you have a
he
relationship with them? Was it like an
yeah,
open
yeah,
uh,
open adoption. Yeah.
there you
Yeah,
go, yes.
they still come to my house, I still get to talk to them all the time. It's not what I wanted. And when I got out of prison, the prison had me on lithium. And it actually worked for like it fixed my sleeping schedule, but all of a sudden, you know, um it it wasn't filtering through my kidneys properly, and I went into full-blown psychosis. Like, I was hearing SWAT teams in the other room that weren't there, and, that was really scary because I didn't wanna expose them to that, and I didn't want them to expose them to a mental health crisis like that. So, they stayed with my dad, while that was going on, and when I got out on probation, so they give you when you get out of prison, they give you like a month's supply of mental health meds, whatever they have you on in the prison. When I got to the pharmacy to get my refill, it was over $1,300. Half the stuff I didn't even
Wow.
need. But now I have no way to pay for this. Like, I don't even have like a place to live yet. I'm just trying to, get my life back. And they told me the only way you can get health insurance is if you get pregnant. This is when Paula Page was governor at the time. And you couldn't get health insurance in Maine unless if you had a kid in your custody. And I'm going, I'm just trying to be okay enough to, get back to my other kids. But this is the system that we have. They profit off of mass incarceration and our cheap labor. Then they profit off of our kids going to the state. They love mental health crisis because they make so much money off of it. The suffering of the
and
American people is $1 trillion industry. And,
and
it was really hard to, face that, because I had this, glorified idea of what America was and, to really see it for what it truly is. And, that was really hard. And, I kept
and
going
how
to
was you
therapy.
able to overcome all of that and be here today?
Well, I had to get off all of the psych meds that the prisons had me on, and I had to change my diet. I found out that if I eat really healthy, like fruits and vegetables with, no processed foods, my mental health issues are at a minimum. But things are so expensive these days, like it's sometimes it's really hard to do that because it's either, eat for the week or eat healthy for the day. So, you have to eat every day. But I went in prison, I started writing because I watched this show and in about solitary confinement, and your brain literally slows down from the lack of stimulation because it's just
Yeah.
not using it. So when you get out, that's why people get so freaked out because normal stimulation feels like chaos. And the
Mm.
only stimulation you're getting in solitary is violence or, absolutely nothing. And so, like, I was realizing how much my brain had been rewired, and just to go into Walmart, like I'd throw up when I first got out. And driving a car, it felt like we were going at like 100 miles an hour, and I look over, we're going like 35. And you feel so irrational, and it makes you feel stupid. But it's like other people aren't going to understand this because they haven't been through it. But I kept painting and I painted murals while I was in prison. And, all of the
Nice.
women that I was incarcerated with are like, you really need to keep doing this. Like, you're really amazing. Like, you brought so much, art. I painted murals all down the hallway. And they're like, this makes this place such a beautiful place instead of just these white walls. Like, it's so inspiring. Like, you have to keep doing this. So, I started doing art shows when I got out. And I finished my book, which is coming out soon. It's called No Justice, Just Us. It's an in-depth of my addiction, my trauma, my prison bid, and turning my life around. I worked at a couple of jobs, and then I started contracting my own cleaning jobs because it was just, having
Wow.
to deal with, certain people, it was really triggering for me. And I was so scared of having a bad reaction and, either getting fired or getting the cops called on me. Like, I would just freeze and I wouldn't know what to do. Like, I always had the fight response with trauma before
Mm-hmm.
I went to prison. I was quick to snap and, let's fight. Like, no, you're not. doing nothing to me, but I was so scared of going back and going through all that stuff again. I would just freeze and I wouldn't know what to do. And people would think I had like, I don't know. I don't know what they thought, but that was like really hard and like embarrassing.
Yeah.
And it just felt so awkward because you don't know what to do and you feel like you can't relate to anybody. Um, but I also, I try to make up lost times with my kids. And, that sometimes that's hard, really hard to do, especially when they're teenagers and, they go through their phase where they're mad at you for being gone. And so, that was something I had to deal with. And I finally got to a therapist that actually like listened to me. She was like, I just don't see the bipolar diagnosis. Like I don't want to talk, discredit, that other guy, but according to the DSM-5, like you don't qualify for this. And I kept telling these therapists, like, I don't want to take your meds. I don't want to take your meds. Every time you guys put me on a medication, it's like playing Russian roulette. And you're not around when I'm hearing SWAT teams that aren't there, or try thinking I want to end my life because I have this psych med in me that I shouldn't have. And I kept getting gaslit, like they'd put in my file like, oh, there she's being defiant, she doesn't want to take her recovery seriously. No, I am taking my recovery seriously. I've played Russian roulette for the last 20 years and it's never worked. It's only almost gotten me put in a grade or in an institution. Like, and this is a problem with, psych doctors. They think they're so much smarter and they know so much more. It's like, you're not the one going through it. Like
Yeah.
I've tried all these different medications and not a single one worked. And the one that did, out of nowhere did the same thing. Like it worked for a little while and then it went very horribly wrong. So, and like that's what
I
I
share
think.
your the mixed feelings about it because I have had family members where it has saved their lives,
Right,
but I have had family members where it has become an addiction or a bigger problem than a solution. As for me, I have chosen not the meds route as well. The only
hmm
thing I will say is, holy smoke, that's a lot harder because you
yeah,
have to do so much work
you do.
and work on that self awareness. And until I got a mental health diagnosis, it wasn't, I wasn't able to give myself grace or compassion because I had the perspective that others had against me,
Right. The
because
stigma.
yeah, all that stigma, like what the hell's wrong with you? And you're
Yeah,
like, oh my gosh, I don't even know. And I want to do another mental health evaluation because I don't feel I was diagnosed with bipolar as well, and I don't feel the bipolar as I used to because it was manic. For mine was like the manic one. I will
right,
have huge breakout and is screaming and hollering and everything else. I don't have those anymore. So it's like, did it
right,
go away or is it just like asleep?
right. And
So understanding your brain, it helps a lot as well.
absolutely. Yeah, and people need to understand, like, you are not your diagnosis. It is just something you deal with. It
Yeah.
does not define you. It does not make you a bad person. And the problem is, like, the stigma is so real. Like, people confuse mental health with intelligence. Like, no,
Mm-hmm. Nope.
I'm smarter than a lot of you. I just, have a hard time regulating my emotions and, masking it on certain days. And, once I really started to explore the high functioning autism, because I have sensory issues, like my phone, for example, my phone had this certain setting where it would vibrate and it would send this sensation up my arm.
Mm.
And I know other people can't feel that, but for whatever reason I can. And it would literally elicit like an instantaneous emotional response. Like I'd either want to cry or I'd want to break something. And, like you have to learn when you're getting overstimulated. You have to know your body's limits. Um, you have to eat right and you have to exercise. If you're having all these mental health issues and you're eating sugar and caffeine and bad stuff with chemicals in it every day. I suggest you take the chemicals out that really aren't good for you before you go down the road of medication. And yeah, medication has helped a lot of people. I know people who probably wouldn't be here with it, but they're so quick to just throw them out like candy with only doing a 15-minute visit. Like, you shouldn't be prescribing these
I agree
crazy
with
psych
you on
meds.
that one. Let's try other things before we
Right.
choose the meds. But is there anything else that you would like my listeners to know about you or
Yeah.
the book? Is it for 2024? I mean, if it's not coming
Well,
out now at the end of the month, this is recorded in December though, and it's going to be published later on. So this conversation might not make sense right now.
well, I wrote a book called No Justice, Just Us. The very first cell I was in, somebody wrote, "There's no justice in the system. It's just us in the system." And I wrote in-depth story about my addiction, my trauma, everything, how I turned my life around. And the website for the book is up. You can't order the book yet, but it will be available soon, and it's being formatted and in its final editing stage. So you can read about it. But yeah, you can't order it yet. But I also have an environmentally friendly clothing brand based on my art. Like, this is one of, like, I
Oh,
painted.
yes, the clothing. You mentioned the
Yes.
clothing before the interview. Yes, tell us all about it.
Yeah. So I
That
paint
is
all these
adorable.
designs. Thank you. I paint all these designs, and I'm super weird. One day I'll be like kind of gothic and like dark femme, and then the next day I'll be painting butterflies
I
and
get it.
pretty stuff. But yeah, it's very feminine and it comes in plus sizes, which is awesome because I'm a stickler for inclusivity. You know, as women, we are told, our worth it depends on how skinny and pretty we are. And, I just wanted to make something that empowered women and made them feel confident and stunning, no matter what size or walk of life or race or religion you are. Like, I just wanted something, for everybody. Like, you can match a painting with a whole outfit, and the painting is on the tag. You can see I'll send you the website after we're done too. But you can see the paintings. You can I mean, there's dresses, shirts, pants, scarves, bags. There's even aprons and like sheets and stuff. But
I
you can like
love
match a
it.
whole outfit with one painting. And yeah, it's my
That
own
is
personal. I
so
got it selling in
cute.
a couple stores in Texas and in Maine.
Nice.
So
Look
yeah,
at you, girl.
well,
I
thank you.
love it. I
Yeah,
love it. So what's the website?
it's legaleriest.com/en/Elizabeth.Mikotowicz. I'll write it out for you in the
Yeah,
in the
no, that's fine. I
message.
will put it in yeah, yeah. You can send me the email later. I
Okay.
will put it on the show notes for the description of the episode. I love it, girl. I love that you overcame so many things and you're still I putting the big fight, and getting your life together. And I love that. I love that you're going after your dreams and wrote the book because more people need to know about your story and the clothing line. That's amazing.
Thank you. I also started working with some state representatives, and we did get some bills passed. Now in the
Heck
state
yeah.
of Maine, it is mandated that all jails provide tampons and pads free of charge, and that is a problem in jail. Women will literally make their own
Mhm.
tampons out of desperation and get infections. Like, this should not be happening. Like, these jails get over $100 a day per inmate. You can afford to give women pads and tampons. And you can buy them on the commissary, but they jack the price up like 3 times what it is out here, and you
Yeah.
only make $5.25 a month for working 40 hours a week. So,
Wow.
yeah,
Well, I'm glad that you have a strong mission, and I'm sure a lot of women appreciate you.
thank you.
So thank you so much for coming on my show and telling us a little bit about you and what you do.
Thank you for having me. It was nice talking to you.
Alrighty, well, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Life with Francie podcast. You can find my podcast in all major platforms as well as my YouTube channel. Like and subscribe, help this girl out, and check out her website. It will be on the description of the episode. Hope you have a blessed day. Bye bye.